I'm James Swanwick. Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking to a physician and a mum who's 37, and Emily Ray is her name. Lovely woman from Chatanooga in Tennessee, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with American geography, it's on the southwestern border of Georgia, about 2 hours south of Nashville or 2 hours northwest of Atlanta. And you're going to hear Emily talk about her experiencing post-natal depression. She's the mum of a 20-month-old and a 4.5-year-old, and her depression was leading her to seek comfort in alcohol. A bottle or two of red wine most days and most evenings, as you'll hear her share. And just a really wonderful, vulnerable conversation that Emily shares with us here in today's episode. She's 105 days alcohol-free as we recorded this, and she was, in fact, a listener of this very podcast when she listened to a couple of episodes and then gave us a call and then joined us in our 90-day experience, and now here she is celebrating 105 days alcohol-free, and you'll hear her share that she doesn't really want to drink again. Well, she can't believe that she ever did drink. I think we're close to her words. So let's have a listen. Just a reminder, if you would like to get your hands on the Alcohol Freedom Formula, which is a guide that I've written specifically to help you get alcohol out of your life. It could be reducing alcohol, it could be quitting entirely. But the process that we walk through our clients is laid out, I should say, in this guide. If you haven't got it yet, you can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide, or you can click the link which is in the description of this episode down below. The YouTube channel is at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube. There's a book, a hard copy book I can send out to you for free. You just cover the shipping. It's alcoholfreelifestyle.com/book. And if you are a high performer, you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, you'd like some support, get into a like-minded community of other entrepreneurs, investors, physicians, high performers successfully, I guess. But you just can't be successful. You just haven't been successful in conquering this thing that we call alcohol, which I refer to as attractively packaged poison. Then you're welcome to have an exploratory phone conversation with Coach Victoria English or Coach Jim Miller, and you can book that call over at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/schedule. The link for that's also in the description of the podcast. All right. Here is physician. Here is mom. Here is Emily Ray, 37, embracing her imperfection. You have a 20-month-old and a 4.5-year-old, Emily. Are they good kids? Are they troublesome? Tell us a little bit about them.
No, my daughter she's 20 months and she's a free spirit. She's very independent. She likes to do everything herself, which is really fun. And my son is, as far as troublesome, he's just more emotional. He's very in touch with his feelings and very sensitive and such a lover. So they're very different.
And which one do you relate to more? Are you the independent and do everything yourself from the 20-month-old, or are you the in touch with your feelings from the 4.5-year-old?
Probably both. I have a lot of independence in me, and then I have a very emotional side. I do think of myself as a kind of an emotional roller coaster sometimes. So I think they get it. They get a little piece of me. Yeah.
And you're a physician, aren't you? And just tell us a little bit about where you live and where you're based.
So I am in Chatanooga, Tennessee. We just recently moved here. So I started a new job. We used to live in the New Hampshire area. And I love what I do. I treat patients every day, and really am grateful that I can make an impact in that way.
Mm. And then also, I must acknowledge you're willing to be somewhat of a patient yourself, because you did in fact join our Project 90 quit drinking program because you wanted to make a change. So just because you're a physician doesn't mean that all of a sudden you've got all of your health together all the time. as well, does it? So just tell us a little bit about, what was going on with you pre-joining us and what your motivation was.
So as a physician, sometimes I think there's a fault where we think that we can handle everything and we can do everything ourselves. I think some of that is a personality trait of people who go into medicine. And I was one of those people. I always have had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and it was always kind of a social thing where it seemed to be normal to a lot of people because everybody binge drank in college, and everybody in med school, we would study all week and go out to the bars and, get drunk and do crazy things and bond over that. So that was all normal. And then once I settled down, got married, had my first child, it was, I don't want to say controlled, but it was more controlled. And then after my second child, I developed postpartum depression. And in that situation, I didn't want to admit that I had that, nor did I really recognize it. And it was more just, I'm just really tired. I'm not, I can't have that. I'm just a mom to two now, and two is a lot to deal with, and parenting's not easy, and I just have to get through this stage. But then I started turning to alcohol, and it turned into a daily thing, causing a lot of headache and problems in my life, in my relationships, being very absent with my children, not necessarily physically, but mentally and emotionally.
Thank you for sharing. What were you drinking, and what was the frequency of your drinking?
Mostly wine. I was always a wine drinker.
Red or
my
white?
husband and I, red wine. I never was a white fan. I loved good, very, very nice wine. But as I was using it with the postpartum, I was pretty much drinking any kind of wine that I could buy, and hiding it significantly, and almost on a daily basis.
How much of the wine were you drinking?
At least a bottle to 2 bottles of wine a day, probably.
And when would you start to drink? Was it at nighttime, in the morning, in the afternoon? Like when did you first start to have when did you have your first glass, so to speak?
Usually it would be like mid-afternoon, because I feel like being an intelligent person, I would wake up, have a little bit of anxiety. I'm not going to drink, right away. I'm going to handle my day. I can do this. I'm strong. And then by, 3, 4 in the afternoon, after being with the kids all day, or because I wasn't working at the time, just because my husband and I were going through transition with moving and new jobs. And so I kind of let alcohol determine what I was going to do. And I let it take complete control over my life, or I just didn't care.
And do you think that was impacted by the postnatal depression?
Absolutely. I think, honestly, I don't think I ever had a healthy relationship, but it was intermittent. So there'd be episodes where I would have blackout moments, back in college, or even throughout, my 20s or 30s. And I'd kind of push those away, apologize for what I did, and move on. But with this, it became a daily thing, which I had never dealt with ever in my life.
And so when mid-afternoon came around and it was about 3 o'clock, as you said, what were you feeling at that time? Like, what was going on in your body or in your mind? What were the thoughts you were experiencing?
Most of it was numbing, not wanting to be there, not wanting to feel any of the stuff that was going on. There was also some boredom. Hanging out with a 20-month-old and a 4.5-year-old can be very, very rewarding. But day in, day out, when I'm used to working full time and not having that job or career to identify with, I feel like a lot of the postpartum was a loss of identity, and alcohol became more of a friend in a way, and more of a comfort, and also a numbing.
A friend, a comfort, and a numbing. Yeah. Looking back on that, if we dissect your words, a friend, a comfort, a numbing, it's easy to see or experience why it feels that way in the moment, isn't it? Was that your experience?
Absolutely.
Mm. And why do you think that is? Like, what felt comforting or companionate about it, or friendly about it?
I think that I didn't have to explain anything, that I didn't have to prove anything to alcohol itself, I guess. And that I felt very alone, and it served its purpose at that time, even what I thought it was serving. Now I look back and know that it didn't, but yes, it felt like something, a very friendly comfort for my loneliness and for my unworthiness that I felt inside, and I just felt empty, I think.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, Emily. Why do you feel you felt unworthiness in those moments?
I think it really all stems back to my self-worth, and I had always throughout my entire life, I've been very successful, and grew up in a very wonderful household with supportive parents. I've always kind of done the quote right thing. And obviously I went to med school, and I became a physician, and I have thrived in my career. But I just felt that by becoming a parent, I feel like I lost some of that. And I thought parenting, when I wanted to become a parent, I thought that it would give me even more. And I feel like my entire life I've been just grasping at achievements and not actually honoring what I truly want inside. So there was a lot of disconnect that I needed to piece together.
Yeah. Well, you have tremendous self-awareness around that, Emily. I acknowledge you for that. Was having children and becoming a mother, was that also grasping at achievements? Or when you were referring to grasping at achievements, was that more of like the professional achievements?
You can say that, or what I've thought about is society, puts a lot of pressures, especially and not that they don't put pressure on men, but on women, to live by a certain standard. And motherhood is one of those kind of check boxes that we want to check off. And me being a parent is a phenomenal, wonderful thing. And I appreciate it so much. But at the time, I don't know if I knew how to handle it, or if I just assumed that I would be fine with it and didn't prepare myself enough. Especially because I feel like I didn't truly give myself enough time growing up to really know myself, because I was always trying to prove something and always trying to achieve something. And I just ignored who I truly was inside, and didn't really honor that.
Society does that, doesn't it? Cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in the world, and it can be different depending on which state of America you grew up in, and it can be different depending on which country you grew up in, and it can be different depending on whether you grew up with a father only or a mother only, or which friends you associated with, or what school you went to, in terms of which environment you were placed into in some of those formative years. And so the conditioning is real. It's like a tidal wave, isn't it? Where everyone's doing life a certain way, and there is an expectation, therefore, that you will do it that same way. And if you don't, that's when the comparison analysis can kick in. That's where shame or embarrassment can kick in. I can relate to that myself in my own life. When I was in my early 20s, when I was 23, in fact, I decided to leave Australia and go and live overseas. And I thought I'd go for 2 years and come back. Well, I was actually gone about 22 years. And, I'm in my mid-40s now, and I returned to Australia. And the friends that didn't leave Australia and stayed here are married/divorced with children and homes, etc. And I have led an absolutely fabulous life. I love my life traveling around. But even me coming back into my home country just for 48 hours and spending some time with friends and family, the comparison analysis kicks in for me. And I go, oh, have I messed this up? Maybe I should have stayed back in Australia 21 years ago and settled down when I was in my mid-20s, etc. And so all of a sudden, even me understanding and having done a lot of coaching and self-development work, even I can go down a temporary rabbit hole where I'm like, oh, man, life, I haven't fulfilled the expectations that my parents and my friends had for me. So I can relate to a lot of what I think you were sharing there. Did any of that resonate?
Every single friend of mine their goal in life was to, go to college, meet somebody, get married, have a successful career, have kids, and live happily ever after. And not everybody needs to do that, not and there's no right or wrong, but I feel like there is so much pressure around that. And if you feel inadequate in any of those check boxes, then there's something, you punish yourself for it, or you're very hard. Just my personality type. I am a perfectionist, and if I wasn't doing everything right, then the whole world was going to crumble. So the comparison trap is definitely a huge, huge thing.
Well, the world will always be crumbling for perfectionists, won't it? You and me both, Emily. Oh, the world's crumbling. Everything's a disaster because circumstances aren't perfect. But it's funny because one of the things that we learn and coach inside of our Project 90 is that conditions will never be perfect. Because a lot of clients, when they come into our quit drinking experience, mistakenly think in the beginning that they should retreat from environments where there is lots of alcohol. And I say to them, no, on the contrary, run towards environments where there's lots of alcohol and practice being alcohol-free. Because otherwise you're just putting yourself in a safe, controlled environment for 90 days where everyone in there is not drinking, and that feels safe. But then when day 90 or day 91 comes along and you're no longer in the group and you're out in society, conditions are not going to be perfect. There's always going to be someone offering you a drink or an excuse, to party, or to, if you're stressed or anxious, to have a drink. So conditions are never perfect. And I think it's saying you've started to really appreciate that and work on yourself in ways where you can process those situations better. I've seen you step up to be able to handle and process imperfect situations better, Emily. Do you feel that you're making that progress also?
Oh, absolutely. I think imperfection is beautiful. I think chaos is needed sometimes. I have embraced just life in general, just kind of being good, being bad, having joyful moments, having sadness. It's all real, and living a real life is what I need and what has fulfilled me, because living in this fantasy perfectionist world is just like living in jail. It's miserable and lonely. And when you put yourself out there and you just embrace the imperfection, it's unbelievable what comes out of it. I mean, it's astounding, and has given me this inner peace and calmness that I would pay $1 million for. It's insane. So, yeah, I'm just really grateful for that. And it's such a simple concept, but it took me 37 years to get here.
Mm. Can you give us an example of where you've embraced the imperfection of your life in these past 100 days or so?
I think one of it is parenting. I'm not perfect by any means as a mother, but I love my kids probably to a fault. And now just soaking in just the little funny, silly things that they do and say, not trying to make them a different person or make them the best kid, or the smartest kid, or the kid who walks first. And we just do silly things now. We have dance parties in the living room, and make have great story time where we have different characters, and it's so much fun, just to not have this external voice, I guess, saying like, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. I know that you and I have talked about this, that should is a word that maybe should just be eliminated from the dictionary. But so I think that that's one of the things, parenting for sure. And then just friendships. I've really grasped onto the people that I really care about. And P90 has brought so many people, very, very amazing, intellectual, inspiring, just awesome human beings that I will be friends with for the rest of my life. They are truly astonishing people. And I couldn't have asked for a better set of people to go through this program with. And I can credit some of my journey, actually a lot of my journey, to them, picking me up when I was down or when I was vulnerable or crying, which was one of the parts about this program that made it so different, is that I think I stepped into it and I said, there is nothing else has worked for me. And I'm at this point in my life where I'm miserable. So I'm going to just try it and dive right into it. And I bared it all. And they all saw that, and they didn't judge me. They looked at me with very loving eyes. And when I was struggling, they lifted me up and pulled me through. And it's just been an amazing experience.
So wonderful to hear that, Emily. When you shared that nothing else had worked, what were you referring to?
I think the biggest, as far as alcohol goes, I think that I thought I could do it on my own because I'm an intelligent person and have everything in my life, and nobody would have known that anything was wrong except the people who were closest to me. So I could strong arm it and get through it with willpower and do it myself. But it just was a continuous vicious cycle of talking myself in and out of getting over it. And then therapy, any experience that I've had with therapy in the past, in terms of treating anxiety or depression or the postpartum, I was talking to a therapist at the time. I always said what I was supposed to say. I could manipulate the situation to make it seem like I was fine and that everything was working for me, and I kind of worked the system to say, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it.
Amazing to hear how supportive all of the other members and clients are inside of our Project 90 experience. And I just see so many people doing so much to support other people. It's not just getting the support, but it's also offering the support. And I say this repeatedly. The fastest way to learn anything is to teach it. So when you learn something, most people will just learn it and it goes in one ear and out the other, or you remember it for 12 hours or 24 hours and then you forget it. But if you learn something and then you go to your mum or your dad or your son or your daughter or your friend and say, hey, let me just teach you what I just learned, and you say it back to them, not only are you helping coach and teach the person you're speaking to, but you're helping to cement that lesson in your own brain and your own mind. So just by virtue of the fact that Emily is sharing her story here and you, the listener, are driving in your car or you're running or you're wherever you are, you're listening to this, she is now coaching you. Even though she doesn't think she's coaching you, just by sharing her story, she's coaching you. And I'm hoping that obviously you feel touched, moved, and inspired by this. Why do you think the other members inside of the community that you were in were so supportive? Like, what's the pattern that you noticed of the type of person who was in there with you doing it that you feel was a large contributor to you getting through this process?
I think a lot of us have been very successful in life, whether that be in many ways, as far as career, family, and didn't really have any huge issues that they thought, besides alcohol, that alcohol was this problem that they really needed to squash and couldn't do it alone. And as we went through the program, you realize that there's a lot of other things that do come out. And everybody had their own specific journey. But I think by all of us coming together and opening up and telling our stories and sharing our daily battles and actually our very positive experiences, because I think the program is an incredibly positive and motivating program. Unlike, I just feel like I never felt like I was admitting that alcohol had control over me or power over me. It was more like, I want to better my life. And so do all these people. And they all have done that. And they've achieved so much, as far as not achievements, but less tangible things such as joy, happiness, growth, authenticity, honesty, integrity, all these things that people just crave in their life. And we all shared that we were missing that from our lives.
Yeah. And now looking back, you look back to that time where you were feeling depressed. You had post-natal depression and you were drinking the red wine, a bottle or two, starting in mid-afternoon. When you look back at that time and you compare it to where you are now, what do you feel? Like, what do you think? What's the insight that you got?
In relation to alcohol, or just with the depression?
Depression and alcohol. Just any insights that you've generated from that when you look back at it?
So when I look back, number one, I've really realized that alcohol does nothing great for you. I feel like it fuels the fire for anxiety and depression. I always stamped myself with a person that had anxiety, and I don't really have anxiety anymore. I mean, there's moments in life, obviously, everybody has anxiety and everybody has concerns and worries, because that's just part of being a human. But I'm so calm now. I have a very calm demeanor. I wake up in the morning very happy, and ready to go, and like excited about life. And if I could have gone back to that woman who was suffering and so sad, alcohol would not have been the answer. And I think positive encouragement and self realization and kind of digging deep down into yourself to honor what you need and what I needed. I feel like that person 2 years ago was a person who cared about everybody else and didn't care for themselves. And now I care so much for myself, and I have so much worthiness, and that I am me now, and that's who I'm going to be. And I'm unapologetically me. And it really attracts people into your life that you want to be around and you want to be with. And it makes you love that much harder. It makes you appreciate that much more. It makes you more grateful. And you just are so thankful for everybody around you. And it makes the entire clan or tribe or whatever you want to call it happier and more fulfilled. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I think everybody knows this, is that self-love and inner harmony is my number one. And it makes me just incredibly happy.
I'm sure it probably makes your children incredibly happy too, without them realizing why, because mum is probably more present. Is that accurate?
Oh, I am so present with my children. And I'm really grateful that I did this at 37. I wish I would have done it even before that. But, I think sometimes things do happen for a reason. And, they're not going to remember a drunk mom. They're not going to remember an angry, frustrated, spiteful mother. Not that I was that all the time, but, there were moments where, your fuse is very short, and you don't have a lot of patience, and you're not living in the moment, and you're kind of looking into the future or living in the past. And your kids, they deserve everything, and they are so innocent. And I'm really glad that I can give them pretty much everything that they could wish for.
So good. May I ask what being present with your children feels like? I mean, are you intentionally being present, or do you think that that's just a byproduct of being this, upgraded version of you? In the moment, are you thinking be present, or do you think you're just naturally being present?
I think it's a very natural feeling. I don't have to think about it. I think when you're thinking about it, the perfectionist brain kind of kicks in, which if you're doing what you love and spending time with people you love, such as your children, then you don't really have to think about it.
Yeah, beautiful. And what was really fun for me to learn was that you joined us having initially listened to one of the episodes on this very podcast. Would you just explain the circumstances around how you came to discover and listen to this podcast and then ultimately join us in our experience?
So I had listened, number one, to your podcast, and I think you were just talking about kind of your daily routine, which really resonated with me. Kind of a monotonous routine where you just felt kind of unfulfilled and blah, and like, what am I doing with my life? And then I listened to I think they call him Indo. I can't pronounce his full name, but he was talking about how he had a cheers at a wedding, where they were going to have a $5,000 shot. And at the time when I was trying to back off to quit alcohol, my idea of alcohol was that there was no way that I could ever be a person that doesn't drink, that I would be some kind of girl in the corner with the scarlet A, because I would just not be fun. I wouldn't be cool. I wouldn't be able to drink all this really amazing wine or scotch. And my husband and I were very avid scotch drinkers, and we really appreciated a good scotch. And when they were talking about this $5,000, bottle, it just intrigued me. And I'm like, how could you turn that down? Like, how could you feel that great that was something that you could say, oh, I'm good. I'm fine. Take it or leave it. But now I understand. I get it. I my life is so amazing now and so vibrant and wonderful that the thought of alcohol just, it almost grosses me out, which if you would have asked me that 4 months ago, I would have said that you were certifiably insane.
How long has it been as we're recording this today, Emily?
I think it's been 105 days.
Okay. Do you remember the last drink that you had before you joined us?
I had wine with my sister-in-law.
Okay, red wine with your sister-in-law.
Red, yeah. I usually drink Cabernet.
Where were you? What time of day? What were the circumstances?
I would go over there and we just kind of catch up on life, and have a glass of wine or two or three. I was trying to, quote, behave myself. So I only had one glass of wine. But that was the day before I joined the program.
And had you decided to join the program when you had that glass of wine with your sister-in-law, or was it the next day that you went searching for it and then joined us?
Well, funny you should ask, because the day I joined, it was an evening call because I had to reschedule the call with Victoria. So it was later in the evening. And after I got off the phone call with her and then with Jim Miller, she texted me and she said, there's a call at 8. I want you to get on it. And it was like a half hour from when she had texted me. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I can't do that. I can't jump on. And that's what started it all. And I think certain people of the group really vividly remember me just being a deer in headlights and completely dumbfounded and not knowing even what to say.
Just for our listeners' benefit, Emily's referring to Coach Victoria English and one of our enrollment coaches, Jim Miller, who are part of my team here at Alcohol Free Lifestyle. Yeah. So So you decided to join, and then Coach Victoria said, okay, there's a Zoom call with other members starting in 30 minutes. Let's go. Get on it.
And I was like, what do I have to lose? Let's do it.
And then you were very anxious and deer in headlights on the first call, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And probably for a couple weeks after that.
And did you find it challenging not to drink in those first few days, the first week, or was it surprisingly easy?
The first few days were not really that hard. I would say the first week to 10 days were not hard, because I feel like you're in this rhythm where you're excited about it and it's something new and you have all these people around you to support you, even though they're perfect strangers, but you're talking on Marco Polo and you're telling them very, deep things and personal things. And then around day 14 to day 21, almost up to a month, I think it's a lot harder because reality hits and you're like, oh, this is my life now. This is what I'm going to be doing. And you have a lot of emotions. It's an emotional roller coaster, laughing, crying, screaming, regretting. And there's, living all the things that, you've kind of left in your past. So I would say the first 30 days is the hardest. And then after that, it genuinely, it gets easier. And at some point the switch flips to where you want to live your life and you have to choose between living your life or not. And I chose to just run with it. So.
Well, you certainly did that. And then I saw you dance with it as well, because you joined us in Austin, Texas for our annual wellness weekend there in downtown Austin. And we did a silent disco where we put on some headsets, and we had a moderator who kind of told us how to dance and how to move, and then gave us, freedom to dance and move however we felt. And I seem to recall you doing some tiger crawls across the carpet, or you were kind of doing a sexy dance up against the wall, if I recall correctly, Emily.
Austin, that trip really sealed the deal for me. It was so wonderful to meet all these like Zoom heads in person, and to hug them and embrace with them, and just it was amazing. And the dancing just added to it, because it was so uncomfortable at first, and then once we all kind of embraced it, you could just make a fool of yourself and love every minute of it. So I would highly recommend that. James, that was a really cool experience.
I'm so happy that you felt that way. Emily, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks for opening up and being vulnerable, that you've shared, a glimpse into your life that not many people are willing to share, certainly not publicly, as you have. So I really thank you for that and acknowledge you for that. I know that a lot of our listeners are going to find this really inspiring, and possibly begin their own alcohol-free journey, or even if it's not related to alcohol, maybe it inspires them to change or to have a conversation to say, I love you, or no more, or yes, or no, depending on whatever your life circumstances are. So thank you so much for sharing, Emily.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, James. And I just wanted to end it with a quote that one of my dearest friends from the program always says to me. And she says, "You're perfect just the way you are," which is now my tagline. So I hope that this can help someone, and just know that there are people out there that will support you and love you no matter what.
Beautifully said. Emily, thank you so much. And to you, the listener, thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. See you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I want to load you up with some free stuff. If you look in the show description, there's a link there to get my guide, which is the Alcohol Freedom Formula Guide. And in that guide, I will walk you through the process and system for successfully reducing or quitting alcohol. It's the same system and process that I give to my clients inside of Project 90. And if you would like to get your hands on that guide, you can click the link in the description part of this episode, or you can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide. Likewise, if you would like to be considered for Project 90 to join our community and get some accountability, some coaching, and have fun, achieve some goals over at least 90 days with our help and support, then you're invited to schedule a complimentary coaching call with one of my coaches. You can do that by clicking the link in the show description or going to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/schedule. Now, Project 90 is for over 30s only, and it's really for people who are ready to get long-term power over alcohol. You don't have to quit forever, but you will have to quit for at least 90 days with our support. Just a reminder, 95% of my content is free and plastered all over the internet. If you just Google James Swanwick and the word alcohol, you'll find that. For those of you who want additional support, if you want coaching, fun, accountability, if you realize that you can't do this on your own or you just plain don't want to, then I invite you to schedule that call and we can talk about if Project 90 is for you. If you would like to take some of my supplements, swanvitality.com is the website. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I have a liver support product called Loving Liver, which I designed and specially formulated to help remove toxins from your liver after years of alcohol consumption. Again, there's a link in the show description. We've also got a green powder there, which turns into a green juice filled with amazing ingredients to support you and give you energy throughout the day. And there's also a magnesium product, which I take every night to help me prepare for sleep and to sleep through the night. So there's a few options there. Lastly, if this episode or the show in general has helped you or supported you in any way, I would so appreciate it if you would write a review. It really does help the show climb the rankings and expose the show to people who don't yet know about us. So if this show has benefited you in any way and you feel compelled to pay it forward, just writing a short little review, hopefully a nice one, will be so appreciated and I will thank you immensely. Lastly, if you'd like to talk to me about anything at all, feel free to send me an email at james@alcoholfreelifestyle.com. I do read and respond to every email. And you can also follow me on Instagram at James Swanwick. Send me a message there. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Catch you on the next one.